It is 10 o'clock. Good morning. I'm Lucas Panzica from the 104.5 The Zone studios. Sunday night, Nashville Soccer Club fell at the Portland Timbers 4-1, giving up 4 goals in an 11-minute stretch in the first half. Nashville went down to 10 men with the Brian Anunga red card in the first half as well. Nashville defender and captain Walker Zimmerman was officially selected to represent the United States at the Paris Olympics as part of the U.S. men's Olympic soccer team. The U.S. will begin group stage play against host France on July 24th. 2 former Tennessee players went head-to-head in NBA Summer League action over the weekend. Lakers first-round pick Dalton Knecht scored 12 on 3 of 13 shooting as Santiago Vescovi scored 6 for the Warriors in a blowout loss. Tragic news in the NFL this weekend. Vikings rookie cornerback Kyrie Jackson and 2 other former college football players, Isaiah Hazel and Anthony Litton Jr., were killed in a car crash in Maryland. Jackson played college football at Alabama and Oregon. He was a 4th-round pick by the Vikings in the 2024 draft. He was only 24 years old. For other foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Oh, it feels so good to be back. Good morning. Welcome into 104.5 The Zone. We are happy to have you. We got Jackson. We got Lucas. You're stuck with me until 1 o'clock. 615-737-1045. That's how you can jump in on the conversation at any point. The F&M Bank chat also available to you. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch is how you can get involved there. Hope everybody had a safe holiday weekend. Did everybody return with all their limbs and digits? I didn't do a proper inspection upon walking into the studio at 9:58 this morning. I assume nobody got JPP'd.
Good morning. I did not blow anything up on this 4th of July, 2024.
Jackson?
I'm patriotic.
Did you lit fireworks?
Of course I did.
I did not either. I was driving all over the place on 4th of July. I honestly didn't even see fireworks, to be honest with you, because I spent most of my 4th of July in the car, but it feels like I haven't seen the two of you in a month. I don't know. I'm sure the two of you enjoyed your reprieve. Jackson was very upset with me that I didn't call him at any point over the weekend, and I told him, just as I'd tell the audience, the day that this show ends, none of you will ever hear from me again. That'll be the end of it.
You didn't check in?
What am I checking in for? Why do you need a wellness check from me?
How is he supposed to know that you're safe?
Yeah, I was worried about you.
I mean, check in.
You'd probably just check Twitter. I'm probably tweeting too much on a holiday when I should be off my phone. My screen time down to 8 hours a day this week, though, so clearly the vacation was much needed. So, I don't know. How soon before kickoff did you get back for that late game for Nashville SC and the Portland Timbers last night, if you want to even call it a game? Because when I turned it on, it was, I was ready for a little nightcap soccer. I was putting off my Game of Thrones watching until after I had, seen enough soccer to make me feel comfortable about talking about it this morning. By the way, Nashville SC, as Lucas said, has Walker Zimmerman getting called up for the Olympic team, which will begin the Olympics later this month as well. I believe the U.S. men's Olympic team begins their group stage play Wednesday the 24th, if I'm not mistaken, right now. What time did you get back before that game? Because I know you were in Florida.
Yeah, it was a long drive to go all the way from Pensacola, Florida to Portland, Oregon for that late kickoff last night, but made it back. Got a couple hours of sleep, even despite making the trek back from Portland. Yeah, bad day for Nashville at the office. They give up 4 goals in an 11-minute stretch and just this stunning flurry from the Portland Timbers, and they come back from a long road trip empty-handed after road trips to Columbus and Portland. And as you said, Walker Zimmerman is off to France with the U.S. Olympic team. Cool opportunity for Walker to go play in the Olympics. In Olympic men's soccer is a little bit different from major tournaments in that teams aren't sending their first team. They're sending a U23 team, and every nation gets 3 players over the age of 23. Walker Zimmerman is one of those 3 players. For the U.S., it's something that he wanted to do. I think it's something that was always kind of on his career bucket list, and they will open up against host nation France July 24th, like you mentioned. So Walker will be out for the next few games for Nashville as he's with the U.S.
Yeah, I don't know that he necessarily wants last night to be the sample size that he's being evaluated on for the Olympic team. I saw Ben Wright of Broadway Sports tweet last night, I've watched all 249 matches in Nashville SC's professional history. That 45 minutes talking about the first half of the game, because, of course, they lose 4-1, but all 4 goals, I believe, were in the first half, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
That 45 minutes was the worst I've ever seen, among the worst I've ever seen from any professional team. The only thing I can compare it to is Brazil's 7-1 loss to Germany in the 2014 World Cup. It was that bad. That's at Ben Wright, who covers Nashville SC for Broadway Sports. He did it. He had a nice breakdown, too, of all 4 of the goals where he described them as, quote, exceedingly preventable. Was that your estimation when doing the game on because you guys do those road games on a monitor, right?
No, we're live and local in Portland. I'm not sure what you're referencing.
Well, a drive.
Like I said,
what time did you have to leave?
From Pensacola to Portland yesterday morning.
Interesting.
6-7 hours.
There's a lot of cops who listen to this. Probably saw him speeding literally across the country to try and make it back for a 10 a.m. radio start.
Those flyover states are called out for a reason, let me tell you. My goodness, what a slog that drive was.
Stupid.
That is corner to corner of the country. Like, you start in this corner, you go to that corner.
No, it was brutal. And the thing is, Nashville started pretty well in this game. Like, they are trying to play a more attacking, free-flowing brand of soccer, because that is what B.J. Callahan is going to implement when he takes over in late July. So they're trying to make that transition under Rumba Muntali, the interim manager, and they were on the front foot early. Both teams threatened early, and it looked like we were in for a really fun game. But Nashville just struggled to defend on the counter. Portland, one of the best counterattacking teams in MLS. They overextended Nashville defensively in a couple of scenarios. A lot of open space that Portland has players that can take advantage of, and they just beat the boys in gold in that 11-minute stretch where all 4 opportunities turned into goals and good finishing from Portland. And yes, less than desirable defending in those moments for Nashville. The thing is, after they got the red card happened after they went down 4-0, and then you thought, okay, it's spiraling. And then from that point on,
at that point, it felt like it was spiraling. You're correct.
Yeah, I mean, it's 4-0. You get the red card. You realize, okay, that's the kind of night it's going to be. But then the game kind of settled, and ironically, Nashville kind of had more control in the second half, and then they actually scored. So they scored. The score was 1-0 when Nashville was down to 10 men, as opposed to 4-0 in favor of Portland when Nashville is at full strength. Weird night in Portland, one that you just want to sort of burn the tape and then move on, because they got to go to DC United on Saturday. 3 more games in the Rumba Muntali interim era before B.J. Callahan comes in and takes over. But I think we are seeing some growing pains of Nashville making that transition from trying to be a more attacking, forward-thinking team in the way that they play.
DJ from Nashville on YouTube, where, as I mentioned, you can interact with the show. Says Lucas has a very special private jet. So it's Lucas and Kirk Herbstreit, the only 2 sports media members in the country who have free use of the personal jet services. I didn't realize that we had a personal jet or a private jet situation. That would have made my logistics for Titans games a lot easier.
Yes.
But I guess you have that worked into your new contract.
Well, we both do reads for Renaissance Bank, which sponsors Nashville Soccer Club. And Herbie does like Renaissance Bank reads on the Jumbotron at Nashville SC games. So, we got mutual connections, and sometimes we're on the same jet, and it's nice to catch up. And yeah, so it's a good situation.
Good to come back from vacation with Lucas is the unrelatable one. That's an upset. I didn't have that today.
No, we threw the jet on your credit card.
Ah, very good. So that's where that charge came from.
Yes, I stole your number a long time ago.
Well, that I actually believe. Not only is he stealing the snacks out of my pantry when he cat sits when I'm out of town, but apparently he has my credit card number as well. It's funny. I was, I don't know how much. What's the music festival in London that they play at Hyde Park during the summer? Do you know off the top of your head?
Glastonbury? I'm just naming festivals that happen in the UK. I have no idea.
My ignorance is going to show here. Not that I would have any specific knowledge of that, but it was funny because Morgan Wallen and Ernest were playing the festival in London over the July 4th. It was funny because Ernest had him singing Happy Birthday to America on the July 4th in Britain, which, of course, famously, tea in the harbor and all that. But they had to fly commercial back, I heard, because there were not enough private jets coming out of London for all the artists to make it to their respective July 4th plans on time. And turns out Lucas is one of the people
was using one of them,
hogging up a private jet, ruining our environment day after day. We'll see.
Nashville's still above the playoff line in 7th in the Eastern Conference, but it's very muddled. A lot can change in the East, so every game feels pretty critical to stay above that position in order to make the playoffs at the end of the year.
615-737-1045 is the number. Like I said, we will get your phone calls throughout the course of the day. So summer vacation is not over for most of you, but the Titans will start to trickle back into the facility now that we are through the July 4th holiday. So we'll tell you what that means for summer vacation largely being over for the local professional football team. We'll take your phone calls, as I mentioned. We've got a lot of good stuff to get throughout the course of today's show. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone. Forget about Welcome back to the show. We are fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. So, by the way, National Fried Chicken Day over the weekend. You were in Pensacola. I don't believe Hattie B's has yet conquered the Pensacola market.
No.
Though I'm sure that's on the horizon for their grand world expansion. But I hope that that at least some people in the audience celebrated National Fried Chicken Day over the weekend at a Hattie B's closest to you. Thinking about it for lunch today, as a matter of fact. What I'm also thinking about is football season. I was, we were sitting around the pool it was either Friday or Saturday, I want to say. And, always in conversations with me and other people, it feels like work comes up in some form or fashion. And I had expressed the idea, I'm ready for training camp to start. Like, I'm ready to get this thing underway. I'm excited about all the new pieces and parts. I'm looking forward to joint training camp with the Seahawks. I think Cosell is going to come into town for that in particular, and I think we're going to be able to do some fun stuff with that, so stay tuned. But just the idea that training camp is right around the corner because they will report on July the 23rd as we sit here on July the 8th. So I'm ready to get to it, and I think, a lot of Titans fans certainly in our audience have expressed a level of excitement about this season, and you will start to get people trickling back into the facility this week. Now, there's nothing for the players specifically, although once we get to about July 15th, that's when the official dates on the NFL calendar start to pass. For example, designating franchise players and trying to work towards a deal. There are timeline expiration dates that will start to come about, and you'll have front offices working on that. Now, for the Titans, they don't have a franchise tagged player this week that they're actively, or this year that they're actively trying to work out a contract deal with, so that's not something that's going to be going on in the facility, but you're basically laying your groundwork for the roster construction as early as this week. Now, I don't know specifically when Rand and Callahan are going to start to get back to work, but July 4th is usually the last weekend that the coaches in the front office will have before they start to have to get back in the office and start to plan things, because it's not like they can just show up on the 23rd for training camp and everything will go seamlessly into plan. This is Brian Callahan speaking about his work and preparation leading up to the offseason break when last we met with the Titans head coach and what will happen after the July 4th weekend.
No, guys there's programs available. Our strength staff does a great job. They give them a take-home program to follow, some guidelines, things they suggest they do so they're ready to roll. And the key is to not waste the work they've done at this point. Take some time, take a week or two, take a break. But, you hit after July 4th, it's getting close. It's time to go. And these guys are pros, and they understand that. But we give them any resource they need. Our staff, performance staff, is here every day. So if guys are in town, want to get a workout, they can come in and work. There's no regulations against that. So they've done a great job, I think, with the designing of the program and with the take-home program as well. Guys have whatever they need available to them.
Is that kind of your message to them? Like, on top of that note, just making sure you're taking advantage of opportunities the next month and a half?
They know it. They know what's coming. And everybody in football gets to, I get to about the 4th of July and I start getting a little antsy. I can feel it. I feel the season coming. I feel the urgency start to pick up. I relax a little less at that point. But, yeah, these guys know. They know what it takes. Very rarely do you have guys report out of shape. Everyone's usually pretty much dialed in and ready to go because, they know what's in front of them. A 17-game season with a training camp is pretty daunting, and they know what they need to get ready. And the message is you've worked really hard at this point. Let's not take a step back. Let's be ready to hit the ground running when we start up in July.
I feel like you're...
So that is Brian Callahan, Titans head coach, speaking prior to the summer break for the Titans about not just the offseason work that they were getting at the time, but the take-home program. So these guys have resources, and you can have a certain amount of contact with players as an organization prior to them arriving, obviously. But for the front office in particular, now you start to cycle back up the free agency machine. So for those of you who are lusting after safety help, now is the time when you start to really buckle down and say, all right, we've given, the appropriate amount of time to step back for people to start to give some contracts out prior to the summer vacation. But now we really have to put our foot down as far as, all right, this is the money that we're willing to spend. These are the players that we are still considering. This is how the circumstances might have changed in the past couple of weeks. And you take into account all manner of different information, but it's more about the personnel side of things as much as the coaching. For the coaches, it's about, all right, organizing their first training camp. Even though all of them have been through training camp in some form or fashion, they'll have to, design their own program, and that's something that takes a little bit of work and effort as well. So that's kind of what the first week back to work looks like for the organization.
So for the players, it's like the weeks leading into coming back to school. When you're a kid, like
you have your list, right? You're going around to your different uniform stores. You've got your checklist of all your backpacks, your dividers, your 3-ring binders, all these things. That's kind of the phase that the players are in right now, whereas the coaches are, they're having they're not their parent-teacher meetings, but their teacher-teacher meetings or their administrative and teacher meetings before the thing actually starts to roll.
They're setting up their classroom. They're decorating it with all the nice little messages on the board, whatever motivational posters they want to have up. And
who do you think has the kitten, the famous kitten hanging off a tree limb?
Hang in there.
Poster, hang in there. Which one of the assistant coaches do you think has that in the meeting room?
I don't know, Bill Callahan. But instead of buying 3-ring binders, players are running sprints.
That's right.
Those are their school supplies.
This is the time of year when you really start to, for example, in years past, you would have seen the Derrick Henry workout stuff start to ramp up because, one, there's no NFL news unless, God forbid, something happened. And by the way, Lucas mentioned in the update the tragedy of Kyrie Jackson, the Vikings 4th round pick. And I almost hate the way that people in sports start to talk about the football player first. And it's not for me to nitpick statements and things like that, but I feel like anytime one of those awful things happen, and there is no question that this was a terrible tragedy. Did you see the car? Did you look at the pictures of the car? It looked like it went through a trash compactor. I mean, just awful stuff for a couple of people, including Kyrie Jackson, to have lost their lives over the holiday weekend. But anyway, that really, any kind of legal issue or personal tragedy are really the only NFL news at this time. So you start to see those workouts pop up more and more often. Lonzo Wright says uniform stores. Is that specific to private school?
Oh, yeah. No, that's definitely a private school, Catholic school thing.
Okay.
I can relate to that. I did Catholic school in middle school, but yeah, I was done with uniforms after 8th grade.
Oh, my God. No, I think, it was my entire, that's funny that I just assumed that everybody went to uniform stores before going back to school.
Most people wore T-shirts in high school.
I took back the unrelatable thing. Yeah. I said, give it back. I can't have you having the private jet to yourself the entire time.
I do remember the uniform stores, but I was over the uniforms after middle school for sure. But,
okay.
I mean, who is this period most important for right now? I mean, other than T'Vondre Sweat, is there a clear answer?
We'll get to him. I mean,
sure, but when you're talking about what players need to be doing in order to be able to hit the ground running at the start of training camp.
Well, the answer is the quarterback, right? Like, the answer is always going to be the quarterback and the skill position players, because that trip to Cabo is not just that Will Levis took the vets on the trip to Cabo and they spent a couple of days together, doing team building activities and also throwing and stuff like that. The answer is always going to be the quarterback. But second on that list, if you're talking specifically about this roster, is players rehabbing from injury, which includes, to the best of our knowledge, T'Vondre Sweat, because this is a significant enough injury for him to miss all but, 1 day of the offseason program. He was available, at least for, I guess we were only out there for 1 day of rookie minicamp.
That's the only time we noticed him available in any way.
Yes.
And on the field.
So, yes, T'Vondre Sweat is a good answer there. And we have a topic later in the noon hour about the most polarizing players on this roster. Certainly T'Vondre Sweat will make an appearance when we have that discussion. But it is most important for the quarterback and for the players rehabbing from injury, because not just for the fact that the scrutiny is going to be on T'Vondre Sweat, but the coach said that they expect him to be available for training camp, that they said that final week of OTAs maybe, and certainly by training camp he should be full go. So that is one, given his, the discourse around him already, where it's hyper-focused on his weight, hyper-focused on his conditioning, hyper-focused now on his availability. And I don't want to say that the concerns, I even hesitate to call them character concerns, because what 20-year-old or 19-year-old isn't going to party in college? And T'Vondre Sweat, some of them don't, by the way. Some of them who know they're going to be professional athletes are so singularly focused on the ultimate goal of achieving the ultimate goal of being an NFL player. That was not T'Vondre Sweat's experience. For those of you who heard Dane Brugler's interview with us on, what was that, last Monday, a week ago, when we had the lead draft analyst for The Athletic on. And this is something that we had heard as well coming through the draft process. He was very honest about his lack of productivity for the first 4 years of his collegiate career, a lot of it correlating with the idea that he was very much enjoying being a Texas football player at Texas. So yes, T'Vondre Sweat is a very important player to keep an eye on here.
Is that still a concern, though? Like, I don't think the quote-unquote character concern is legitimately a concern at this point with Sweat. I think it's so much more about what he wasn't able to do at minicamp and the physical stuff and the weight stuff and being in shape to be able to hit the ground running. Like, I don't know that people are kind of wringing their hands about, is T'Vondre Sweat going to be able to handle the off-field stuff?
Well, here's the only reason why I think it matters. One, what is the city that we live in famous for? We are second to Vegas, really only second to Vegas, in the fact that we throw the most consistent parties as a city. Our city is built for entertainment, and our population damn near doubles on the weekend because people want to come in and party in Nashville. And there have been, again, sightings of him out and about, whether you're taking screenshots from DeAndre Hopkins' birthday party on Instagram and posting them and saying, T'Vondre Sweat's, out at a bar, not with a drink in his hand or anything like that, but just a physical picture of him with his teammates at one of his teammates' birthday parties. Like, the fact that he has been seen out more in public than he has on the practice field, Lucas, does allow for that to linger, even if you're going to allow him the opportunity, and I think most people should, for this to be a clean slate, right? Or as clean a slate as humanly possible. Because obviously you can't just forget about the fact that he got a DWI. What was it, the day before or the week before his official 30 visit with the Titans?
Well, it was reported the day before his official visit.
Fair enough. reported the day before his official visit. Then the Titans take, the large contingent trip down to Texas to visit with him and his family. So, I mean, the fact that he spent the entire draft process trying to convince teams, hey, that was me. It's not going to be me at the next phase until such time as he shows that he's no longer that person or that he's no longer susceptible to, temptations that any 21, 22-year-old might be coming into money and professional opportunities. Nashville is definitely a party town, party city like that. So I think because he landed here specifically and because they know about all of the background on that and still chose to take him anyway, then you have those conversations around Sweat, which is why he's one of the players that we'll talk about in the noon hours being one of the most polarizing on the roster, despite him not playing a down of football for this team yet.
Maybe it's me then. The concern is almost entirely on will he be available, will he be fit at training camp, not the off-field stuff, because it hasn't spiraled enough to where it's a trend, right? It's one instance in college.
Sure.
And that's not enough for me to have that as a red flag hanging over T'Vondre Sweat. Everything with him is purely based on what he did or didn't do on the field in the offseason program.
Well, at the risk of having this conversation early, did you not kind of hyper-focus on what Dane Brugler said about he's a 5-year college football player, right? And in 4 combined seasons of being a Texas defensive lineman, he had a total of 9 tackles for loss and then had the big year, right? So if his level of interest, and again, I'm not saying that everybody's college decision should be held against him because he did enough to be a second-round draft pick in the NFL his final year of college and, sold at least one team well enough on the idea that he is going to, I think, just take it a bit more seriously. I don't think there's anything wrong with keeping that in the back of your mind, understanding that, how much were you talking about T'Vondre Sweat before last year?
In the college football?
In the college football world. But beyond recruiting and knowing what he might have been as a recruit.
Oh, not much at all.
Right.
Yeah, not much at all.
And then all of a sudden he's the Outland Trophy winner, right?
I'd be lying if I said I was paying attention to, Texas defensive linemen going into last season.
Sure, but it is the best defensive lineman in the country in his final season, and the production is there and the skill is there. And the question becomes, okay, well, where the hell was it for the first 4 years that you were on the roster? Anyway. So beyond that, that's kind of what the back-to-school ramp-up for the Titans will look like, for any organization will look like. I did see an interesting question that we might pivot here to for a couple of minutes since we've got some time in the segment from Ja L on YouTube. You can interact with the show on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. He asks of Brian Callahan, since we played some audio from him earlier, what are Brian's chances of winning Coach of the Year in the NFL? So I looked up the Coach of the Year odds, and this is courtesy of Vegas Insider. Of course, you would be betting these, I believe, offshore for future wagers at this point, or future odds at this point. Who do you believe is the Coach of the Year leading candidate prior to training camp and the season actually beginning? The odds-on favorite.
The odds-on favorite. Is it Andy Reid?
It's not. In fact, Andy Reid is at the very bottom of the list at plus 6,600. But think about Coach of the Year. How many times has Bill Belichick won Coach of the Year?
You're right. Maybe once or twice?
No. It's been more than
3 times. He's won it 3 times.
Yeah, it's been at least 3 times.
He won it in 2003, 2007, and 2010. But yeah, it's not. I've gotten so used to in the college football world, Coach of the Year pretty much ends up going to the coach of the best team.
And that's not really the case in the NFL.
No, not really, actually. When you look at the last few years, like Kevin Stefanski's won it twice.
Yes.
In the last 4 years.
Well, because the people who are voting on this are grading on the degree of difficulty of, oh my God, he got the Browns to the playoffs not once but twice, give him Coach of the Year. Like that's how Coach of the Year is viewed. So that Andy Reid, at least according to BetMGM, that's where the Vegas Insider odds are provided by, has the longest odds for that. And as you mentioned, Kevin Stefanski, the reigning Coach of the Year, Brian Daboll the year prior, Mike Vrabel in the 2021-2022 season, and that was the year after Kevin Stefanski won it the first time. Very rarely is it the person who's regarded as the best coach in the NFL. The person with the shortest odds to win Coach of the Year is Matt LaFleur at plus 900.
Can you tell me the last coach to win Coach of the Year that coached in the Super Bowl that year?
Was it McVay?
It was Ron Rivera, 2015.
Whoa.
So it's been almost
that long ago.
It's almost a decade.
Now, yeah, because Vrabel, they were the number one overall seed, but obviously, famously, one of the most devastating playoff losses in Titans era history to the Cincinnati Bengals brought that to a pretty short halt. If you look at the Coach of the Year odds, the top 5 are Matt LaFleur at plus 900. Then you've got Jim Harbaugh and Raheem Morris at plus 1,000. Shane Steichen at plus 1,400 with D'Amico Ryans, Jonathan Gannon, Robert Saleh, and then you get to Brian Callahan at plus 1,800 to win Coach of the Year, according to BetMGM's odds. If you're a team, because we're going to talk about teams who have the opportunity or who have the potential, not the opportunity, I should say, to go from we've done worst to first in the NFL divisionally. Today we're going to do first to worst in the NFL based on last year's results. Brian Callahan fielding a competitive football team with the Tennessee Titans would be a pretty significant turnaround, right? This is one of the worst rosters in football prior to the draft and free agency. This is a team that had suffered a significant amount of losing in the last 2 seasons. So to turn it around, to make the postseason, it would be an upset, right? Because most sports books are picking them last or favoring them last in the division still, despite all the different changes that they've made. To put him with the same odds as Robert Saleh, though, with the Jets, I think is kind of interesting because if Robert Saleh, I don't know, if the Jets are worth a damn, I'm not going to think it's because it's Robert Saleh's doing. I'm going to think it's because Aaron Rodgers played most of the games this year.
Yeah, like Coach of the Year has gone to Brian Daboll, right, who gets to the playoffs with Daniel Jones as his quarterback with the Giants, to Kevin Stefanski, who is able to sustain through a million quarterback injuries. In fact, 4 of the last 7 winners of NFL Coach of the Year have been rookie coaches in their first year of their first head coaching job. Sean McVay in 2017, Matt Nagy with the Bears in 2018, Kevin Stefanski with the Browns in 2020, and then Brian Daboll with the Giants in 2022.
Yeah, I don't want to count Jim Harbaugh in this because he has obviously been an NFL head coach before, as has Raheem Morris, for what it's worth. But
Harbaugh also won Coach of the Year his first year as an NFL head coach with the Niners.
So just for guys who are back, I don't know, to do this, it's probably worth looking at first-time head coaches more than it is guys in new spots, because Harbaugh and Raheem Morris will obviously be in this discussion, but Brian Callahan, Mike McDonald, Dave Canales, all of those guys are in the top half of the betting odds according to BetMGM, because a lot of times teams changing over coaches have suffered some level of losing. I know the Seahawks are in a little bit of a different situation, but they'll be regarded well if they show any level of competitiveness or meaningful competitiveness in a new season, in their first season running the show. So that's the answer to that question. 615-737-1045 is the number if you want to jump in. Coming up next, we did talk about Dalton Knecht, his slide to the Los Angeles Lakers in the NBA draft. Famously, this is a what, Jackson?
Lake Show.
Mm-hmm. So we will talk about Dalton Knecht's performance in the Summer League because he's been turning some heads lately. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone. So I mentioned that Dalton Knecht was turning some heads in Summer League. I didn't say it was in a good way. Have you seen the shooting struggles that he's been having? I assume not, because you've been in Pensacola Beach and doing soccer games and things like that. I don't know how much Summer League you're consuming right now.
You think I'm not watching every minute of every game of my Los Angeles Lakers in the Summer League? Do you even know me?
Famously.
Our Los Angeles Lakers. Lake Show.
I'm going to get so tired of that when they actually start playing basketball games. So he's struggled to really find his groove, to find his rhythm. They have what they call the California Classic, which is the Lakers and the Warriors. And the Warriors beat them 92-68 on Sunday. Knecht was 3 of 12 from the floor in the first game. On Saturday, he finished with 12 points on 3 of 13 in 22 minutes on Sunday. And the thing about it is, because I have watched, I've seen the highlights and then I've seen a little bit of the games. The thing that stands out to me is his shots definitely aren't falling. And that's what his scouting report indicated would make him a top 10 draft pick in all likelihood, even though he slid where the Lakers ultimately selected him, 17th, if I remember correctly?
Yeah.
He's a shooter, right? Like his best attribute, his most pro-ready attribute is his shooting. He is going to a team that desperately needs consistent shooting around LeBron James and Anthony Davis, and his shots aren't falling in Summer League. Now, the thing that stands out to me, though, is he's getting open in a variety of different ways. There's some nice plays that they're running for him to set him up, whether it's dribble handoffs or curls or whatever, to put him in position. He's just kind of working through it right now, which I think is completely understandable. In the first 2 Summer League games, he was 2 of 15 on jumpers, 13.3%. And, of course, that is not the Dalton Knecht that Tennessee fans know. It does sound like they are they're fielding a lot of questions about it because, of course, you drafted a shooter and all of a sudden he can't shoot in Summer League. So the questions from basketball media about it have been, okay, what's going on? And the response has been, well, they're just trying to let him get his feet under him. Be patient because he's working with new teammates. He's working in a different system. And, I think I'm not worried about Dalton Knecht as a pro just because the Summer League hasn't looked exactly the way that you want it to look. Because, this is a player that averaged over 21 points a game in college in the SEC, was the SEC Player of the Year, and did not have the most conventional route to all of those things. He's not one of these blue blood prospects or highly touted prospects. He had a different route to becoming the player that he ultimately was, but that for me has not been a concern. And when's the last time that he's actually played basketball? March, unless he's playing pickup games or working out with trainers or what have you. He's actually playing basketball games for the first time since the tournament.
2 of 7 from 3 in those 2 games, and he actually had some really nice moments defensively in these games. You've seen him get out contesting corner threes and then running out in transition, hitting corner threes in the same sequence, had kind of a pickoff at half court that he takes back for an and one bucket against the Warriors yesterday. So he's doing some good things, but yeah, the shots just aren't falling right now. Ironically, he plays against the Warriors, who have signed Santiago Vescovi for the Summer League, and Vescovi goes 3 for 4 from the floor. None of his attempts from beyond the three-point line. I don't know how many games in his Tennessee career Santiago Vescovi had 4 field goal attempts from inside the three-point line, but he had 6 points yesterday. It was a blowout win for the Golden State Warriors over the Lakers. Bronny did not play yesterday. Bronny was 2 of 9 in the first game for the Lakers in the Summer League. So what an interesting year for the L.A. Lakers. Just seeing the press conference.
Your L.A. Lakers.
My L.A. Lakers are L.A. Lakers. Seeing the press conference of Dalton Knecht next to Bronny James at a podium with LeBron standing in the back of the room watching. It's like, what a world we are living in right now.
I did see and I don't have the full quote in front of me, but I did see a quote from LeBron making the rounds about, guys kind of comparing Bronny's trajectory to his own, being like, I had no choice. My circumstance in life, I had to live up to this hype to be to make it out of the circumstance that I was in growing up, that we were trying to pull not just himself, but his family out of. And for Bronny to do it when he has nothing like that on the line shouldn't be diminished just because he's being drafted or been drafted by the team that his dad kind of runs roughshod over. I did like the thought process on that, even though it's not going to matter for people who hate LeBron James and don't like the nepotism of it and this, that, and the other. Your Lakers are going to play a game against my Miami Heat. I am now going to declare myself for the Miami Heat because that is where Khalil Ware was drafted, the Indiana big man. So that is who I'm going to attach my allegiances to. So we can have some level of heated debate when your Lakers and my Miami Heat play on Wednesday in the final game of the California Classic.
I look forward to that. I look forward to spending the entire show previewing that Summer League matchup.
Lake Show.
I'm going to send your ass to the shadows. You keep that up.
Brandon on the FNM Bank chat says, it's the Summer League. It's literally the time to work things out. It's 2 games. Dalton Knecht will be fine.
See, we never really talked about the idea of Dalton Knecht. I mean, no, it sounded like nobody expected Dalton Knecht to slide that far.
No.
And the age element of it, it's a little different than the Hendon Hooker conversation we had a couple of years ago, or I guess last NFL draft cycle, where it's like, how much does it really matter? How much is it going to actually change the trajectory of the player? Now, the answer to that is, well, you're taking bigger risks on higher upside prospects where guys like Dalton Knecht or Hendon Hooker in their respective sports are probably closer to finished products. That I accept. We never talked about the element of J.J. Redick looking at Dalton Knecht and being like, yeah, we'll get that guy. Let's just recreate what it is that I was for my entire professional basketball career after coming out of Duke in Dalton Knecht with the Los Angeles Lakers. J.J. Redick being the coach for Dalton Knecht is the thing. I mean, I understand that LeBron is going to have some level of control over what that offense looks like and how that team plays. But I like the idea of J.J. Redick working with a player like Dalton Knecht to see the best version of himself, to work with a guy who is known specifically as, because there is a difference between a shooter and a scorer. I think that J.J. Redick was both at various points in his career, though some would probably describe him more as a shooter than a scorer. 615-737-1045 is the number. Jonathan Hernandez says, Buck rooting for a Miami team is very on brand. Yes, famously, my Miami Heat.
Speaking of the greatest franchise in the history of sports, the Los Angeles Lakers, and the man who I now believe to have made the worst decision in professional sports history, and that is Dan Hurley. The UConn head coach, Nicole Auerbach of The Athletic, reporting UConn has agreed to a new contract with men's basketball coach Dan Hurley through the 2029-2030 season. The 6-year agreement is valued at $50 million per the school.
Was that a question mark?
Yeah, there was a question mark at the end of that one. Lake Show?
Did anybody play their respective situations better than Dan Hurley? Because he got to, he obviously won the championship. He got to take the victory laps everywhere. Then he got to turn down the Los Angeles Lakers, and then he got more money to stay at UConn when they knew he was going back to UConn anyway. I don't know that anybody had a better or more strategic offseason go-to plan than Dan Hurley, to his credit.
Yeah, but now he's not coaching Dalton Knecht. So did he really win?
Who's the real loser here? Let's take a quick pivot since we've been talking a little bit about the SEC. Which SEC and Big Ten newcomers will fare better in their respective new conferences? It's not just USC and UCLA, but Texas and Oklahoma as well. So we'll discuss that. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone.
It is 11:01. Good morning. I'm Lucas Panzica from the 104.5 The Zone studios. On Sunday night, Nashville Soccer Club fell at the Portland Timbers 4-1. Nashville gave up 4 goals in an 11-minute stretch in the first half. Also went down to 10 men with a red card to Brian Anunga. News this morning, though, that Nashville defender and captain Walker Zimmerman was officially selected to represent the United States at the Paris Olympics as part of the U.S. men's Olympic soccer team. The U.S. will begin group stage play against host nation France on July 24th. 2 former Tennessee players went head-to-head in NBA Summer League action over the weekend. Lakers first-round pick Dalton Knecht scored 12 on 3 of 13 shooting as Santiago Vescovi scored 6 for the Warriors in a blowout win in favor of Golden State. Also in basketball news, at the college ranks, head coach Dan Hurley and UConn have agreed to a new 6-year deal worth $50 million. The contract runs through the 2029-2030 season. Tragic news in the NFL this weekend. Vikings rookie cornerback Kyrie Jackson and 2 other former college football players, Isaiah Hazel and Anthony Litton Jr., were killed in a car crash in Maryland. Jackson played college football at Alabama and Oregon. He was a 4th-round pick by the Vikings in the 2024 draft, and he was only 24 years old. For all your foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
I'm sitting here screaming at Jackson about an intro that still has John Dam Robinson in it. What are we doing?
There's no proof of that.
Wait, I just heard it. In the show's intro.
Prove to me that that's John Robinson.
Jackson, you can't delete it, but can you play it again? Can I hear it again? That is from the first day that this show went on the air, because he was the first guest on this show, and for some reason we're still running a damn promo with a general manager that's been fired for 2 years.
I think it's a good throwback.
Yeah, I just don't think that you can. I don't think it's clear and obvious. I don't think there's enough to overturn.
All right,
that it
it's
is
an institution
John Robinson
at this point.
Call the lawyer, call Dan Lust. We'll take this to trial, because I'm sick of hearing that damn intro. It's nothing against John Robinson. It's just dated as all hell. Anyway, good morning. Welcome in. We're happy to have you. The second hour is underway. We're off to a hot start. We are going to talk not about the Titans in this particular segment.
I've always been impressed the way you attack and cover our football team.
Or hate it.
Well, I want to talk about how bad you guys are.
If it's Titans talk you're looking for, he's your guy. It's the Buck Rising Show on 104.5 The Zone.
Jonathan on the F&M Bank chat says, at this point, it's vintage. I agree.
I can't get rid of Diddy, even though we're going to get canceled if we keep using the Diddy promo. I can't get rid of the Forrest Gump poll open, because Jackson is actively trying to get me in trouble with it. And I can't get rid of the John Robinson imaging. I have no control, and it makes me furious.
That's the way, we like it.
Yeah. So anyway, not Titans talk in this particular segment, but because we have conference realignment officially official, USC and UCLA, reminder, Big Ten powers, Texas and Oklahoma as of July 1, now officially in the SEC. Who stands to fare better in their respective new conference situation between those 4 teams? I was listening to Josh Pate's show, and in fact, Jackson, if you could pull this from my Twitter retweets, I don't believe I sent it into the group yesterday, but it'll be on my timeline. Josh Pate, we'll get to that audio here in just a second, because he had a really good point about USC that I want to play for the audience, and Pate will join us tomorrow, Lucas?
Tomorrow at 11:20, we'll talk a little college football with Pate, but mostly it is to revive our annual college football trivia game to embarrass you.
Well, and famously, the first question that you used to immediately embarrass me and discredit me with the audience was?
Who won the first ever national championship game in the year 1998, which I thought would be a dead giveaway. The year 1998, yet you could not answer.
My brain is wired for a championship in 87, not 98, which is how you exposed me to the audience very, very quickly. Anyway. The the situation for Texas and Oklahoma, Texas is obviously the best equipped, right? Can I say obviously that Texas is, one, after making the most recent appearance in the college football playoff, two, recruiting at a level that is maybe not on par with Georgia, and for the purposes of this conversation, Alabama historically, but pretty close, has quarterback play that we are, to hear Paul Feinbaum tell it, he's guaranteeing that Arch Manning is going to be the starter. Did he say week 1 for the Texas Longhorns?
No. He predicted that Arch would finish the season as the starter.
Okay. And by the way, there are some, and not that NFL scouts being down on Quinn Ewers means that he won't be a good college football quarterback, but there are some scouts who are down on the Quinn Ewers experience, something to keep in mind. But we would still, with all that, we know the most about Texas's ability to compete at the highest level because we've just seen it in the Final Four.
I don't think Texas is obviously the best equipped. There's a great argument for Texas as the best equipped, but if you're talking about the notable conference realignment newcomers, which include Texas, Oklahoma, USC, UCLA, and Oregon and Washington, we'll just keep it to those 6 for now. I know Arizona is going to the Big 12 and so is Colorado, but we'll just keep it to those because they're going to the Big 10 and the SEC, that's the Power 2 right now. I know, I get it. There's a Power 4. It's whittling down, but there is a Power 2 in college football, and I think the answer is Oregon. Oregon pulled in a better recruiting class than Texas last year. They pulled in a better transfer portal class than Texas last year. Dan Lanning is quietly building a roster that could theoretically compete in the SEC and in the Big Ten at Oregon, and he's checking boxes that Oregon has not checked in the past. He's checking boxes in the trenches, defensively, the physicality of the program that have typically been weaknesses.
Skill position players over the long weekend. They had a big recruiting win with some wide receiver help.
Well, they had some massive portal wins. Most notably is Evan Stewart, the 5-star wide receiver, transfers from Texas A&M to Oregon. Across the board, high-profile players transferred to Oregon. Dante Moore, the quarterback. You're talking about 2 high-profile blue-chip transfer portal quarterbacks that landed at Oregon this past year. And Dante Moore, the former 5-star that transferred from UCLA, and Dylan Gabriel, Josh Heupel's former quarterback at UCF, who transferred to Oklahoma, beat Texas last year and then transferred to Oregon. Gabriel figures to be the starter at Oregon this year. We'll see what happens there, but a 5-star waiting in the wings in Dante Moore. So to me, Oregon, I would argue, is better equipped to succeed right out of the gate because the schedule plays a massive factor too. I mean, you're talking about Idaho, Boise State, Oregon State, UCLA, Michigan State, and then Oregon plays Ohio State at home. And then they go to Purdue and Illinois, and then they go to Michigan. And then Maryland, Wisconsin, and finishing out at home against Washington, a classic Big Ten matchup, of course, Oregon and Washington. But the schedule will be more favorable for Oregon. They are going to be very well equipped in the trenches to compete immediately in the Big Ten. Dan Lanning has already shown his worth as a head coach, and he can continue to get better as a head coach. That's the scary thing. Still very young in the big picture. So I would say Oregon is best equipped right now out of all of those teams to make some damage in their respective conference. And yes, they have an easier path to doing so. And there's a question about Dylan Gabriel, but there's some questions about Quinn Ewers. Like that's not
there's plenty of questions about Quinn Ewers.
So it's going to be interesting. But I would argue for Oregon.
Dan Lanning 22-5 in his time at Oregon. Sark, for what it's worth, 25-14 at this point over their in these specific jobs. Since they've taken over Oregon and Texas. But the conversation is between those two. Now, USC belongs or should be in this conversation. The difference is they should be in the conversation, but they do not belong in this conversation. We think of USC as being below Texas and Oregon both at this point, under Lincoln Riley, who is supposed to be just as good a coach as these other two, and who I would argue, I might be willing to argue that Oklahoma's better off without Lincoln Riley, based on how the USC thing has gone. Josh Pate on his show, Late Kick Live, and again, Pate will join us tomorrow for some college football trivia, though I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about this topic as well. Josh Pate on USC, I thought was one of the better things that I saw on the internet yesterday.
My whole thing with USC is you need to act like USC. So USC was thought to be one of the big players. When you find out the portal is going to overlap with NIL, do you remember how big a giant people thought USC was going to be? Because Hollywood, Southern California in the NIL era. Think about what we can sell. Well, that's great. That looks good on marketing materials. But if you don't have your you-know-what together behind the scenes, if you don't have the right people making decisions, I ain't talking about the head coach there. I'm talking about the people above the head coach. If you don't have that in order, if you don't have your finances in such a way, if you don't have your donor class equipped to participate in such a way that it leverages NIL, what in the world does NIL mean as it relates to USC? So I look at USC right now, and I look at these other big-time programs. I don't think USC is anywhere close to touching what Texas is or what Ohio State is behind the scenes. Oregon, they could not tote Oregon's jock in NIL right now. And the reason is not because they're poor or they're broke, quite the opposite. It's just because you take for granted that, well, once NIL is a part of the equation, USC will dominate. No, they won't. USC won't do anything without acting like USC. I don't mean act like USC as of recent. I mean act like USC that I knew.
So that is Josh Pate. And again, Pate will join us. His show, Late Kick Live. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel and catch it live on Sundays, Tuesdays, and a Late Kick Extra Pod as well. It's not just because USC has fallen short of expectation. Because in Lincoln Riley's first year, it felt like they were putting together a super team, right? They added Jordan Addison from Pitt. He was arguably the first big, quote-unquote free agent player in the NIL era. We were talking about them adding a top-caliber wide receiver. They brought, obviously, a lot of his recruits, including Caleb Williams, over from Oklahoma to USC, and you saw kind of the makings of what it was supposed to be, and then it fell short because Lincoln Riley's downfall consistently is the fact that he can't field a defense. If they were scoring, let me look them up on CFB stats really quick. If they were scoring last year 41.8 points per game, Lucas, how many were they giving up?
Well, 44.
Not quite, but 34.8.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised.
They weren't getting outscored, but it is, but still, 34.4 points per game is disgusting.
We already have some trash talk in the F&M Bank chat. Kyle from Springfield says, LOL, USC is getting blown out week one. Go Tigers. USC, LSU, week one matchup.
Yeah.
Two defenses that struggled mightily last year. But
where's that game? That's a neutral site game. I want to say it's in Vegas.
I'm trying to remember if that is a neutral site. I think that, Vegas. It's at Allegiant Stadium.
Okay.
September 1st. But when we look at Oregon's schedule and the way that they are going to be able to kind of ease into the season, and then look at USC's schedule, where right out of the gate, it's LSU week one. 2 weeks later, it's at Michigan, the defending national champs. Then you host Wisconsin. Then you are in the throes of the new Big Ten.
Yeah.
I don't know, man.
I had to remind myself looking at their schedule. I'm like, why are there so many damn Big Ten teams on there? Oh, I forgot.
Someone's asking who their quarterback is. It figures to be Miller Moss, who was fantastic in their bowl game after Caleb Williams opted out. He's going to be on some Heisman boards going into this season. But there's just zero evidence to show that USC is going to fix their mentality, their approach, their physicality defensively beyond them making a change and hiring D'Anton Lynn as their defensive coordinator to replace Alex Grinch, swiping him away from UCLA. But you have to see some sort of sample size before you can have any sort of confidence with how bad that group has been defensively. So, I'm not optimistic about how USC is going to enter Big Ten play. I'm very optimistic about how Oregon's going to be able to handle it.
I mean, Lincoln Riley's already been exposed because there's always some scuttlebutt in the offseason about Lincoln Riley making a pro football jump. I mean, I don't know. He's clearly a gifted offensive coach, but I don't know how you could hire that person after seeing the way that he consistently fails in one specific area of his duties. We will talk more about that later with Josh Pate. He will be on the show tomorrow in the 11 o'clock hour. By the way, Keith Bullock also going to join the show. We'll talk some Titans offseason topics with Mr. Monday Night then. Coming up next, though, AFC division winners. Who is most likely not to go worst to first, but first to worst? We'll talk about it. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone. So many people trust Two Rivers Ford. Football players, working moms, business owners. Why? Because Two Rivers Ford has been doing business with integrity for decades. Two Rivers Ford, the South's most trusted Ford dealer. Welcome back to the show. We are fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. So, Lucas was tossing out topic ideas for today's show because it is the off season. Is this the most difficult week to do what we do? Being in an NFL, like being in a football-based market, is this the week that requires the heaviest lift?
Well, we have hot dog eating contest reaction.
I don't want to do that. All I saw in the comments of who even won the hot dog eating contest. Do you know?
It was, I can't remember the guy's name, but he was Italian, so I was happy about it.
Okay. Were you equally as upset as you were happy to see your countrymen win by seeing people in the comment section of any post regarding him saying, it's not the real champion, bring back Joey Chestnut, I'm watching the Netflix show or whatever.
Patrick Bertoletti, the new king of hot dog eating.
Fraud. Either way, Lucas was tossing out topic ideas this morning, and he mentioned one that we've done about a month ago, which, again, is on brand. Thank you for listening to the show, where we discussed teams in the NFL most likely to go from worst, so fourth place in their respective division, to first place. And if you'll remember, Lucas, because I know we had this conversation, we picked the Bengals because the Bengals finished with a winning record last year, but in fourth place in a very, very congested AFC North. So a 9-8 record for the Bengals, adding back Joe Burrow. By the way, Joe Burrow has some interesting comments to, I believe, team media about them being able to be more personnel versatile this year, which I thought was pretty intriguing. We'll talk about that tomorrow in all likelihood. But instead of doing that, we decided to pivot and do first to worst. Who's most likely to crater among NFL division winners from the 2023 season? I know Titans fans are going to be preying on the Texans' downfall. I would have a hard time making an argument for the Houston Texans as being the team that falls off the face of the earth this year.
You have precious little evidence, right, to point to a C.J. Stroud sophomore slump. Like, what reason would you have to predict a sophomore slump for C.J. Stroud?
That they're playing a first-place record is
that they're playing a first-place record, that he's coming off one of the best rookie years in NFL history, and that, teams have an offseason with C.J. Stroud tape from his rookie year to prepare for. Apart from that, in terms of the moves that they made, everything that they did around him, it's really hard to look at that and say, oh, yeah, he's going to be worse in 2024.
So, despite Titans fans wishing for it to be so, I think the percentage chance of the Texans cratering that way would be pretty minimal. Now, I fully anticipate them to have a much rougher go than they did because, and they weren't a perfect team last year, Houston. For all the gassing up of the Texans, it feels like I have been overwhelming in my praise for Houston's offseason. Because I do like the personnel moves that they made. Adding so many good pieces to an already good team, tough for me to ignore that. But it was a 10-7 football team last year, so they're not the most dominant thing in the sport, and they were playing a worst place schedule last year, so there could be some slumps that we can't necessarily foresee. But they do figure to be a better football team in 2024 than they were in 2023. Now, are we keeping this specifically to the AFC?
AFC for now. So okay. Ravens, Texans, Bills, Kansas City Chiefs.
Well, you have your answer then immediately. If you're keeping it just to the AFC, then it is the Buffalo Bills who are most likely to take this dip here. Not just because their roster was culled of many, many contracts that were bloated as they try and work around Josh Allen. And really, Josh Allen's not even that expensive this year. It's Josh Allen and Von Miller that they're working around, which is kind of crazy to think about Von Miller being a Bill again. But at 11-6, they finished with the same win percentage as the Miami Dolphins, who fumbled the bag late in the game, gave up a game to the Bills, and ultimately cost themselves the division, had to go to Kansas City in the biting bitter cold. I think, is that the coldest game on record, that Dolphins-Chief game?
I think it's the coldest playoff game, certainly in the modern era.
I mean, when you're talking about people getting frostbite and legitimately losing limbs from the cold and, being ill-prepared for that level of cold, but still, getting frostbite in Kansas City from a playoff game. The Dolphins finished with the same record. They had the same home and away record as the Bills did last year. Both teams were 7-2 at home. Both teams were 4-4 away, and both teams were 4-2 within the division. Both teams were also 7-5 within the conference. So they're pretty evenly matched beyond Buffalo having a significantly bigger point differential than did Miami, which might surprise people, honestly. The AFC East of the 4 divisions, though, is not the one that I think is the hardest to predict. I would argue that the AFC North is going to be the hardest division to figure out because I think most people have Pittsburgh penciled in for a down year, and a down year for the Pittsburgh Steelers is still 10-7 in a wild card spot.
Yeah, the AFC East should be the Dolphins' division to lose with how precarious the Jets situation is with players that we've talked about. It feels like a house of cards with the injury situation there. Apart from that, it's hard for me to have any argument that it's not the Dolphins' division to lose.
No, but I will.
A division they haven't won since 2008.
That's what I'm saying. You say that very casually, and I think a lot of but we did this exercise with Miami as we did team previews and things like that. Miami it gives me paper tiger vibes, and it's not because I'm down on Mike McDaniel specifically, and I'm not really that down on Tua. But what do you have to do in the postseason if you play in the AFC East at some point? Or even just playing in the AFC East in the regular season beyond the postseason? What do you have to do? You have to be able to play in the cold weather. Tua Tagovailoa, the Dolphins still have not paid him, and perhaps we see a contract come out in the coming weeks and months, potentially before the season starts, because they don't really have another choice but to pay Tua. But there is something real about going on the road and having to play cold weather games, especially when your division is basically cold weather in New England, the Jets, and the Bills for the vast majority of the year. I don't have Tua's cold weather record on hand right now. But I do acknowledge that he does one thing very, very well. He operates, or they have built a system around him where Tua is throwing to spots. And he is anticipating the receiver being in the spot that he's throwing to. The Dolphins' passing game is very, very anticipatory. He is as a quarterback who, as a college player, was, I don't want to say renowned for his mobility, but had high-level mobility prior to the hip injury.
He was a dual-threat quarterback.
A dual-threat quarterback. We haven't really seen that in the pros, and I know he's lost some weight that perhaps will lend itself to him being more mobile. But how often are you talking about Tua creating outside of structure? Josh Allen, it's not just that Josh Allen is he's more physically talented than any quarterback in that division. Yes, we can agree upon that.
Yes.
But it's that travels, that he already plays in Buffalo, that he's already the snowplow of a human being that you need him to be, whether he's throwing the ball or running the ball, because he can do both. And he's the most unstoppable dual threat quarterback that I can think of since Cam Newton. I mean, he has the Cam Newton vibes. It's why I disagree with you that it is the Dolphins' division to lose, because the Bills do have the advantage at quarterback, and even as I understand that the roster in Buffalo is worse. They did not get better as a football team.
It's a big step back.
Miami is not. It's hard for me to justify that Miami got appreciably better with what it is that they need to get better about. They lost Robert Hunt, the guard, to Carolina, who paid him $20 million a year. Connor something, I can't remember the name of the center, that they also lost in free agency, who, of course, Aaron Brewer replaced. Yep. Interior offensive line play is so critical for Tua to be able to operate the way that they need him to operate. And I don't see anywhere with their interior offensive line where they've appreciably gotten better. Their system allows them to cover up some of the offensive line deficiencies because the ball comes out so quick. And a lot of teams do that when they have, when you're working through injury, you don't trust your offensive line in pass pro or whatever your reason might be. You can mitigate some of that. But that is more critical to Tua than I think not knowing about Drake May. And we've seen a lot of Jacoby Brissett in our lives, so I don't know who's going to be the starting quarterback come week one. But knowing what I know about the other 3 quarterbacks in the division, even Aaron Rodgers coming off the Achilles, I'd probably put Tua third if you made me stack them 1, 2, 3, Josh Allen, Aaron Rodgers, and Tua Tagovailoa.
This is not me arguing for the Miami Dolphins as a Super Bowl contender, which I think you could make that argument, but this is not what this is about. This is about a Dolphins team that was on the doorstep of winning the division last year, that, like you said, finished with the exact same record as the Bills, and in the end were 7 points away from winning the division, a 21-14 loss in Buffalo in the final week of the regular season. Miami's last trip to Buffalo, their only trip to Buffalo, I should say, in the regular season is November 3rd. Yes, they will have cold weather games late. Their last 2 games of the regular season are at Cleveland and at the New York Jets. But if the Jets are as precarious as they seem to be, and it's rinse and repeat in 2024, which is a big if, but if we get to midseason and Aaron Rodgers has fallen off again health-wise and their offensive line is once again decimated by injuries because they chose to replace key positions with 30-plus-year-olds that have had injury history in recent years, and it does come down to Dolphins and Bills like it did last year, I think the Bills have taken enough of a step back as a roster for me to be confident that the Dolphins should consider this their division to lose.
I get the logic, and I'm not saying it's not a bad argument that you've made. But I, honestly, Lucas, I would be more inclined to argue that the Ravens and
to go from first to worst.
Yes, because I think that division is, the teams are so much closer together that the percentage chance that that a team in that division would still field a good record. Cincinnati losing Joe Burrow and still putting out a 9-8 product where they're scoring, they're still scoring reasonably well, even if on the season they got outscored. Their point differential ended up being, I think, close to -20.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine any team in the AFC North truly bottoming out.
That's what I'm saying.
In 20. I mean, what's the worst roster right now in that division? The Steelers?
Yeah, probably.
And what's the floor for Pittsburgh under Mike Tomlin, right?
10 wins.
9 wins. I mean, that's the floor when you're talking about truly the bottom of what they can accomplish.
So while I don't believe that the Baltimore Ravens will be a last place team in 2024, I might be more inclined to argue that because I think all 4 teams are so tight. Whereas it really does feel like the conversation until we see what Aaron Rodgers looks like, because Aaron Rodgers could throw a legitimate wrench into this. It feels like it's Buffalo, Miami, and then, the other 2 are just kind of floating out there in a nebulous existence.
Yeah, I could easily see the New England Patriots having a 4-win season and just idling at the bottom of the AFC East this year. So if you're talking about literally first to worst, then I agree with you with the Ravens just because of the state of the division. The Ravens are going to be a better football team in my mind than the Bills. I don't know that it's going to be particularly close in 2024. The roster is far better. The situation around the quarterback is far better. But I see what you're saying because of the state of the division.
Do you want to do the NFC since we have time here?
Sure.
Because Brandon Connor on YouTube, and by the way, you can call the show if you'd like, 615-737-1045. You can also chime in via the live stream. We're live streamed on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, where Brandon Connor writes on YouTube, why hasn't, grammatically incorrect, but why has nobody, I'll correct it for him, mentioned the Bucks going from first place to worst place? Falcons and Panthers are going to surprise a lot of people. So your division winners in the NFC last year, the Dallas Cowboys, the Detroit Lions, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the San Francisco 49ers. Because the Saints and the Bucks finished with the same record, I completely hear what he's saying there. And, the Bucks, by nature of tiebreakers, ended up winning the NFC South. But I'm more inclined to argue that the Detroit Lions would be the team to take a step back there by the same logic that I would argue the Baltimore Ravens. Ravens historically have survived roster attrition in off seasons way better than conventional, than your average franchise, right? They are exceptional at letting players hit free agency on big money deals, letting them walk, and then supplementing that talent with the compensatory draft pick formula that they've had long figured out for a while now. They've been able to game that system as well as anybody. The Detroit Lions, 12-5 last year. The Packers in second place, the wild card team at 9-8, with Minnesota and Chicago both going 7-10, dealing with injuries and substandard quarterback play, let's say. Detroit losing as many pieces on the offensive line in front of Jared Goff as they did is a red flag to me. And I expect Chicago to be better than 7-10. I really do, even though it's Caleb Williams' rookie year and he's going to be in for some rough spots, as any rookie quarterback is. Detroit stands out to me for, one, I don't trust Jared Goff too much, even though consistently, to his credit, Jared Goff has found ways to be a viable starting NFL quarterback, if not a high-level starting NFL quarterback. The NFC North is more jumbled to me than the South is right now because the Falcons in Carolina, I don't know what to make of Kirk Cousins. I don't know if Kirk Cousins is going to start the season. I have no idea what they're going to do with Michael Penix and if that will come to fruition at all in 2024. In Carolina, a 2-15 team turning it around that way, or rather Tampa falling off so much as to let a 2-15 team catch them that way. That would be a really, really big upset to me.
Like Carolina winning 5 or 6 games this year feels hard to imagine. I mean,
and that would be an accomplishment. That would be an
absolutely be a big step. But how much more different is that roster this year from last year? It's not appreciably better in any truly significant way. It's not.
Oh, no, I disagree. I do think, whatever you think of paying $20 million for a guard, they needed it, right? They need, for smaller quarterbacks anyway, the interior offensive line play is essential, and Robert Hunt is a solid player. They have added wide receiver help. So
their wide receiver help is Xavier Legette, who they get at the back end of the first round. Sure, but still surrounded.
They traded for
and Deontay Johnson.
The Pittsburgh Steelers wide receiver. So I get your point. I'm not arguing for more. Like, I'm not arguing that they're going to be a 9-win team, but I'm just saying for where the roster had to go, it's like the Titans. Like they could only get better because the roster was hot trash.
Yeah.
Carolina did some things to improve the roster. I will take your phone calls on this coming up next. 615-737-1045. If you would like to jump in. Also, one disgraced former NFL head coach trying to get back into the game. We'll tell you what's going on with that. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone. Welcome back to the show. We are fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. So, I mentioned that there is a disgraced former NFL coach trying to get back in the game. This headline that I was brought was John Gruden trying to get his reconsideration bid through the courts, through the legal system in the NFL, and did lose in the Nevada. Is it Nevada or Nevada? I always do that.
Dealer's choice.
Okay, I don't think that's true, but I'm pretty sure the good people of Nevada would say otherwise. So John Gruden, obviously suing the NFL for the way that his career there came to an end, famously one-sided emails leaked to the public and used to run John Gruden. By the way, the behavior in the emails, the language in the emails, disgraceful, like completely unacceptable. So
Very unprofessional.
I'm not, sure as hell to send from an NFL.com email, dummy. But okay, so John Gruden has an okay boomer moment where he thinks he's sending private correspondence and public emails, and the emails get brought to light. What is specific or unique about John Gruden's situation is the responses of John Gruden's emails, the responses to John Gruden's emails were never made public because John Gruden, as you know, was being homophobic, racist, and apparently the most egregious offense to the league, critical of Roger Goodell, among those three in his emails. The Goodell thing is why it feels like John Gruden got run here particularly bad. But he loses his bid for the Nevada Supreme Court to reconsider whether a contract interference and conspiracy lawsuit he filed against the league after he resigned as Raiders head coach should be heard in court or in private arbitration. So you had attorneys for Gruden and the league and an NFL spokesman not responding to messages following up on this after notice was posted Monday on a court website. And I wonder, he resigned in the middle of that $100 million contract, right? That was the whole big thing about John Gruden coming back to the Raiders, that the Raiders gave him 10 years, $100 million to be their coach. The Gruden lawyers were looking for a rehearing after a 3-justice panel, according to ESPN, split in a May 14th decision that said the league can force the civil case out of state court and into arbitration that would be overseen by none other than NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell. So Gruden is trying to keep his fate out of Goodell's hands. He's trying to do it through the courts and, ultimately loses this latest lawsuit.
I mean, he's firing for conspiracy against the NFL.
I would think that he would have pretty good grounds to stand on. Now, again, I'm not saying that John Gruden deserves to get back into the league based on Roger Goodell and other parties allegedly conspiring against him. John Gruden used the language that he did. It was made public, and people chalk it up to cancel culture or whatever. It's called being accountable.
And he was not an NFL employee at the time. And the emails in question.
Right.
He was not an NFL coach at the time. He was working for ESPN.
Yes. So worth clarifying that from 2011 to 2018. John Gruden is being held accountable for his actions, whether you want to shrug that off as, wokeness, cancel culture, or whatever. No, there's a difference between whatever you want to pigeonhole as that and accountability, okay? I just don't see a path back to the NFL for somebody like John Gruden, when specifically the person that he is alleging conspiracy from is the person that he was most publicly attacking in those emails by name, which is the commissioner of the league, Roger Goodell. What would John Gruden's place be in the NFL? What is even a case like John Gruden's that we've seen where a coach who's experienced, or a figure who has experienced some level of, public indecency is the wrong word, but some level of nefarious behavior that they were held to account for that ultimately allowed them to come back? I don't know. I don't know why he would want to even get back into the coaching at this point, but he's spent a lot of money trying to legally pursue what ultimately is probably the rest of that contract that he felt he was owed, having to resign because he's seeking monetary damages and alleging that selective disclosure of the emails and their publication by the Wall Street Journal and New York Times destroyed his career and scuttled endorsement contracts. So his Tony Romo immediately started doing the Corona commercials for Gruden after the whole Gruden spiel, right? So he's losing money not just on the NFL contract side of things, but on the advertisement side of things as well. Because he was John Gruden, one of the most marketable personalities in football for the longest.
Oh, yeah.
Who's one of the most commercially pushed NFL football figures that in my lifetime anyway. I can't speak to, generations before, but John Gruden is most famous to me from his time on television, more so than his time as a Super Bowl winning coach, even as I, obviously remember the teams that he won the Super Bowl with. He's trying to get back into the league in some form or fashion in an advisory role. I don't know that John Gruden is pursuing being an NFL head coach again. But I'm just so curious to see how this ultimately plays out, because I do think he has a case to be made. We only ever saw one side of those John Gruden emails. So it did feel, I'm not going to call him targeted because he set himself up for failure that way, but he did feel specifically targeted to run Gruden out without seeing the correspondence on the other side. Because it's not like Gruden was sending those emails to themselves. And I think the Commanders team president was somebody he was communicating with at the time.
They were emails sent to Commanders executive Bruce Allen,
who Washington fans famously hate.
Well, it was all uncovered during that workplace culture investigation of the Washington franchise.
Yeah.
The league finds these emails from Gruden, many of which specifically name Roger Goodell, the homophobic slurs, racist, sexist, all the
things.
A lot of the things going back and forth between Gruden and Allen were unsavory.
But again, we didn't see the stuff that was coming back.
Right.
And Bruce Allen was allowed to kind of, scurry back under a rock, and John Gruden is out here fighting for financial compensation.
And the league appealed to the state high court because a judge in Vegas decided in 2022 that Gruden's claim the league intentionally leaked only his documents could show evidence of specific intent. So an act designed to cause a particular result. That's fair.
Yeah.
So it's kind of between that line of, he's being held accountable.
Are you okay?
Those almonds are stuck in my throat.
What? Stop eating almonds during the radio show.
I can't speak.
What the hell happened there? He just started to peter out. You can see him if you're watching him on Zone TV. He's a little red in the face. He's about as red as that shirt he's wearing.
Oh, I got too. There's Slay's dark chocolate almonds are just sitting here.
Okay, just because Slay is capable of eating on air and talking at the same time, which, by the way, is hilarious to me anytime he does it, doesn't mean that you should follow that example, okay?
Emmett on the FNM Bank chat says, somebody will hire Gruden, especially if these recent defensive-oriented head coaching hires fall flat on their faces.
Speaking of 3HL, Don Davenport has texted us and clarified that it is, in fact, Nevada.
Nevada.
I got told this one time when I worked a Nevada game, and the fans were adamant. Okay, there it is. So Don Davenport bringing expertise. Also, Slay saying, leave his food alone in the FNM Bank chat. You got busted.
I did get busted.
Stop eating his food. See, it's unbelievable. We were for some we have to go to break here, but for some reason your eating habits came up in conversation this weekend because you and Grace have similar just mindsets when it comes to food. Anything in your path is not safe. But, if it's over there in Slay's area, best to leave it be.
I feel like John Gruden in this scenario because yes, I am guilty.
Am I going to uncover some homophobic, sexist, and racist emails?
No, nothing like that.
Should we start our own investigation? Luke has been trying to run me out for years.
Yes, I am guilty of eating the food, but the food was left out, so I would argue there is a conspiracy here to bait me with the food so that I would eat it and then be busted for it, just like John Gruden. He's not denying that he sent these emails. They're out there for the public. They're there. But his argument is, I sent the emails, but clearly the league very specifically picked out those emails to unveil and push me out of the NFL. I feel like this was left out very specifically to bait me into eating them and then get busted on the air for it.
Well, you can file a legal...
I'm the victim, says John Gruden.
Perpetually. 615-737-1045 is the number. Coming up next, moves and players around the league that you probably forgot about. Lucas is going to quiz me. I'm Buck Rising. It's 1045 The Zone.
It is 12:02. Good afternoon. I'm Lucas Panzica from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. Nashville Soccer Club defender and captain Walker Zimmerman was officially selected to represent the United States at the Paris Olympics as part of the U.S. men's Olympic soccer team. The U.S. will begin group stage play against host nation France July 24th. Walker Zimmerman will miss the next few matches for Nashville SC, who are coming off a 4-1 loss at Portland Timbers on Sunday. College basketball news, UConn head coach Dan Hurley, coming off of back-to-back national titles, has agreed to a new contract with UConn through the 2029-2030 season. The 6-year agreement is valued at $50 million. And tragic news in the NFL this weekend as Vikings rookie cornerback Kyrie Jackson and two other former college football players, Isaiah Hazel and Anthony Litton Jr., were killed in a car crash in Maryland. Jackson played his college football at Alabama and Oregon. He was a 4th-round pick by the Vikings in the 2024 draft. He was only 24 years old. For other foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Final hour is upon us on this Monday. Thanks for hanging out. Hope you had a good holiday weekend. If you're just now joining the show, Lucas is here and gassy. Jackson is also here and holding it down. One of the most violent burpers I've ever met in my life. It feels like an alien is about to emerge from your mouth every time you open it up and just cut one of those. It's just sharp. I've never heard somebody who burps so sharply.
This feels like defamation, libel, all of the words, all of the legalese. You have no proof of any of this.
I do. I literally just heard you like gurgling over there, just shoving your mouth full of dark chocolate-coated almonds and nearly choking to death in the second hour. And yet we persevere.
The almonds have betrayed me. This is going to ruin my career.
615-737-1045 is the number. You also have access to the F&M Bank chat. You can live stream the show. See Lucas choke to death on his almonds on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. At least if we're going to get some comedy out of it, we might as well do it in front of a live streamed audience. So how do you want to play this game? Because the NFL is always filled with transactions. By the way, did you see the latest news? I assume you didn't because it didn't make your breaking sports news update. Did you see the latest earnings report from the NFL, courtesy of Sportico?
No.
The NFL last year earned, you want to guess?
No.
You don't want to guess?
No.
How much money they earned last year?
No.
Why? Would it make you sad?
No, it'll just, my guess will be so far off. I don't want to do that.
Well, no, that's the more fun point of the game. Guess a number.
You got to give me a hint.
No, I don't.
Give me a hint.
I sure don't.
I don't
Okay, fine. I'll make you do math. Each team got $400 million.
No, it's so much worse.
How much money did the NFL earn last season, Lucas, if each team made $400 million?
I'm going to say...
Oh, God.
$8 billion.
That's not correct math whatsoever.
So if each team got $400 million, each division got $1.2 million, which means there's 8 divisions in the NFL. 1.2 times 8 would be like...
Carry the one.
9.6?
Yeah, okay. Both of you are terrible at math. Stop doing it live on air. It's $13 billion.
Oh, it wasn't that far off.
The difference between 8 and 13 is a difference of $5 billion. That math I can do. 13 billion with a B is what the NFL earned. By the way, for the NFL to, before we get into this trivia game that you're going to try and stump me with players and their movements in the offseason, it's just players, right?
Yeah.
Okay. The idea that the NFL Network is cost-cutting as much as they are, having spent $13 billion, and I only say this because we work in media. We have friends who work in media. We've seen a lot of good people lose their jobs as of late, including the Around the NFL podcast. Those 3. Of course, Chris Wessling passed years ago due to losing his battle with cancer, unfortunately. But the idea that the NFL is cost-cutting anywhere and trying to maximize profits even more is really disgusting to me, but I digress. So how do you want to play this game?
So, Jackson, can we hit the terrible game show music, please?
No, I don't like that.
Because we do this every year when there's a flurry of free agency moves. The season comes around, and week 1, week 2, week 3, you're watching X Thursday night football game or whatever noon kickoff that's on TV that day, and you say, oh, yeah, he plays for that team now. So we want to prevent that. We want to have a public service done here to do a little refresher and see how well you remember the litany of free agency moves that took place across the NFL, players switching teams, switching markets. Some of these are trades, but we'll go ahead and get started. And we'll start with the safety, Buck, in Xavier McKinney. Who does former New York Giant, 24-year-old safety Xavier McKinney play for now?
He's still in the NFC.
Yes.
I will say that Xavier McKinney plays for, I want to say he's a Packer.
He is a Packer.
He's a Green Bay Packer. What was the deal?
A 4-year, $67 million contract with the Green Bay Packers. It was one of the 10 richest free agency deals that took place throughout the course.
Is he under 25, Xavier McKinney?
He is. He is 24. Spot Track does the decimals. He is 24.8, according to Spot Track. Let's do the running backs, because there was a lot of running back movement this offseason. We kind of brought him up a couple of weeks ago. Who does Josh Jacobs play for?
The Packers also.
The Green Bay Packers.
Which is a weird thing to say. I don't know why that one's particularly weird to me, but that is for sure a week 1. Oh my God, I completely forgot he played for the Packers type of thing.
Week 1 when they're playing in Sao Paulo against the Eagles, when he famously said that they're not allowed to wear green because of the gangs in Sao Paulo and had to walk it back.
With zero information backing that up whatsoever. He probably got that off TikTok.
Okay, who does DeAndre Swift play for?
Oh, DeAndre Swift, former Detroit Lion.
And Philadelphia Eagle.
Before he was a Detroit Lion, is DeAndre
Eagle. Oh, he was an Eagle last year.
Oh, that's right, because they traded him to the Eagles. Okay, I've got it mixed up.
Yeah, it was Gibbs and Montgomery, the duo.
All right, well, now I've complicated it in my own head. I want to say, is he back in the NFC North?
Yep.
Is he a Bear?
He is a Bear.
Look at this.
DeAndre Swift.
Finally a game that I'm good at.
You're batting 1,000. Wait till we do college football trivia tomorrow.
No, I'm scared.
We'll mix in some portal moves tomorrow.
That's cruel. You can't do that to me.
DeAndre Swift is a Chicago Bear. Who does Zach Moss play for? Or who will Zach Moss be playing for?
Zach Moss is a Buffalo Bill.
Zach Moss is a Cincinnati Bengal. A former Buffalo Bill.
Was a Bill, then a Colt, now a Bengal.
That's right. He will be a Cincinnati Bengal because Joe Mixon is no longer a Bengal, Buck. He is a what?
Joe Mixon is a Houston Texan.
He is a Houston Texan. Big move by the Texans.
Everybody's a Houston Texan this offseason, it seems.
Who does Devin Singletary play for? Pretty nice year with Houston last season.
Yeah. I can't. I'm tempted to look it up and cheat, but I won't. Devin Singletary is not a Colt, is he?
Nope.
Okay.
He is a New York Giant. Devin Singletary will play for the New York Giants.
They said, we don't want Saquon Barkley. We'll let him go to the Eagles. We'll take Devin Singletary off that nice year for the Texans.
Who will running back Antonio Gibson be playing for? He was a Washington Commander. Austin Eckler is now a Washington Commander running back. Who will Antonio Gibson be playing for in 2024?
See, now we're getting more into the fringe because Antonio Gibson, Memphis product, yes?
Oh, was he a Memphis product?
I believe that's correct.
Remember.
Okay. Well, I'm just buying myself some time.
Yeah, he did. He was a Memphis transfer from community college.
Antonio Gibson is a Dallas Cowboy?
He is a New England Patriot. That was a good gag sound. He legitimately said, man, it was only 3 years ago he was a 1,000-yard rusher for the Washington Commanders, and that production has gone down steadily over the course of the last couple of years.
The running backs are all over the place.
All over the place, yeah. So you see what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Like the amount of people that are going to turn on their first Patriots game in Week 8 because they're in prime time or whatever. Oh, yeah, Antonio Gibson, the former Washington running back.
Taylor H says on YouTube, come on, Buck, we know the Colts didn't add anything. I mean, that's kind of true. They really didn't do anything in free agency.
Who does Tyrod Taylor play quarterback for now?
He is the backup quarterback to Aaron Rodgers.
That's
because if Tyrod Taylor is having to quarterback, I will feel bad for him because Nathaniel Hackett will fail him as badly as he failed Zach Wilson last year.
Offensive tackle Jonah Williams, formerly of the Cincinnati Bengals. Who does he play for?
God. If they were willing to let him go, then it's a team that has to be desperate for offensive line help. Jonah Williams, is he playing left tackle?
Oh, I don't know, but the hint here is a former Titans executive. Is
he an Arizona Cardinal?
He is an Arizona Cardinal with general manager Monty Ossenfort. Who does Eric Armstead play for?
A Jacksonville Jaguar.
That's right. He came to the
AFC
Titans
South.
South.
Wanted him, the Jags got him, and that's a pretty nice defensive line room right now.
Who does Jonnu Smith play for? Speaking of the
He is
Titans?
a Miami Dolphin. I was just, for some reason, looking over the Dolphins roster this morning. I'm not sure why.
Well, why don't we continue on this path of Titans legends? Who does Jadeveon Clowney play for in 2024?
This one's a funny one. He made a big scene about going home. He is a Carolina Panther, and he will enjoy a 5-win football season en route to a last place finish, I would imagine, in the NFC South.
Great year. One of his best years of his career in Baltimore last year.
Everybody had a good year in Baltimore last year, though.
Yes.
I'm not giving that to Clowney.
Speaking of Titans legends.
Titans legend, Jadeveon Clowney.
Where will Josh Reynolds be playing his football in 2024 after playing with the Lions last season, or the last couple of seasons?
He didn't go back to the Rams, did he?
Nope.
Where is he?
He is a Denver Bronco. Josh Reynolds. Yeah, you don't like that?
I don't know. Just the idea of Denver football lately, basically since the 2019 Marcus Mariota, Joe Flacco game, the Broncos make me sad. Broncos football makes me sad. And I know that's a national fan base, a very proud fan base, a championship winning organization. They gross me out. I don't want to watch Broncos football.
Couple of pass rushers here. Who will Shaq Barrett be playing for?
Shaq Barrett, most recently with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He has to be on a short-term deal. Is Shaq Barrett a Miami Dolphin?
He is a Miami Dolphin. Who will Leonard Floyd be playing for?
I don't know. I don't even have a good guess on Leonard. Where was Leonard Floyd last?
Buffalo.
Yeah, I didn't have him in Buffalo either. Okay. Pass. What's
San Francisco 49ers?
Okay.
He is 31.8 years old, according to Spot Track.
0.8. Is that the end of the game?
Oh, yes. One more. We don't need to fire up the music again, Jackson, but please remind us, Buck, who Chase Young plays for now.
Titans wanted him.
Former number 2 overall pick, Chase Young, who was with the 49ers.
Chase Young is a New Orleans Saint.
That's right.
Gross. Didn't it come out that he signed a deal while still working through a neck issue? Isn't that Chase Young's situation right now?
Yes, the medicals were the biggest highlight of that deal. I'm trying to remember what the situation is, what details emerged exactly about.
It was not good.
No, it wasn't good. He will be sidelined. So here's what it was. He had a procedure. This came out after he signed that 1-year deal worth up to $13 million, and the Saints had this understanding. They knew what they were signing up for. He will undergo a procedure that, this is from March, should sideline him into training camp, but they believe he'll be ready for the season.
I really thought you were going to go more niche player with me there. I thought you were going to throw me like you remember the BYU player, I forget how to pronounce his first name, but it's Gross Matos is his last name. I thought you were going to throw me guys like that. I was scared.
He did pretty good.
All right. Well, not terrible. Turns out
we'll undo it all tomorrow.
Still on solid ground as an NFL reporter. Well, check back in tomorrow for college football trivia and watch me embarrass myself. But famously, if I'm over 500 in college football trivia, I win. That's the game.
If you're over 500?
If I'm over 500, I win. Because I won last year.
Yeah, you did. And
I stumbled out of the gate.
I had incredibly low expectations of you last year. So the questions that I set up, you turned out to actually go over 500. We were pleasantly surprised or disappointed, however you want to put it. Josh and I have put our heads together. It's not a good thing
if I do well. It's not like that was not a good segment because I succeeded.
Now, Josh Pate has a little more creative control over the questions this year.
I don't like that at all.
Yes, we will do our best to put you in a position to not succeed.
All right, very good. Well, talking about putting people in positions to succeed, there are several polarizing players on this year's Titans roster. Who among them is the most polarizing player on this roster heading into 2024? We'll tell you coming up next. Welcome back to the show. We are fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. It is officially the lunch hour. Check out the nearest Hattie B's location to you. You can also download the app and get your mobile order in. I believe, Lucas, if I'm not mistaken, you get a free dessert when you mobile order from Hattie B's on your first order.
You are not mistaken. That is a stone cold fact.
One of the few actually verifiable facts that's made its way to a microphone on this radio show. Hattie B's has you covered. So, nothing polarizing about Hattie B's. Plenty polarizing about the Titans roster this year. Is there a more, before we get started on this exercise, I don't mean to undercut it right away, because we do have a couple of different storyline threads to follow this season. But if you asked, 10, if you did a man on the street on Broadway, and you went up, you'd probably not get very many good answers on Broadway because apparently nobody knows anything about anything on Broadway other than booze and, Hawk Tua from time to time. If you asked a sample size of 10 random people who the most polarizing figure on the Tennessee Titans is, how many of those 10 would say Will Levis? Because I'm willing to bet that probably 70 to 80%, 7 or 8 of the 10 people polled would say the quarterback.
Yeah.
Of all the players on the roster, I don't think that the general NFL public is going to get into the details, the nitty-gritty on the Tavondre Sweat situation.
Polarizer, according to Urban Dictionary. Noun, a thing that is the cause of controversy on both sides, something that is either loved or hated with no in between. Used in a sentence. Grease 2 is a polarizer. You either love it or you hate it. I love the submission of Grease 2, the movie, to be used in a sentence. I have not either. I don't know that I know it existed.
I really didn't either.
Apparently, you either love it or hate it.
Okay, very good. By the way, the entire cast from Grease, aren't they supposed to be high schoolers?
Yeah, they're like...
John Travolta's like 45, smoking cigarettes, looks like he's been smoking cigarettes. It's one of those ridiculously cast movies of all time, Grease.
Michelle Pfeiffer was the female lead in Grease 2. It most certainly was not John Travolta and Olivia Newton-John.
Okay. So, Alan Goyne on YouTube says, I don't know if this qualifies as polarizing, but I saw several new articles pop up about Burks being traded to this team, that team, or even cut. Well, yeah, it's because it's the offseason. Nobody's actually got news to report, so you're just writing speculative potential trade details. For example, Bleacher Report sent me a notification yesterday making the case for the Titans as one of 6 teams that should be tanking in 2024, which speaks to the level of offseason discourse that makes you want to take a drill bit to your temple. That's kind of where we're at in the news cycle right now. So I would ignore that. At least for me personally, I have not heard anything about Treylon Burks being moved at this time. Do you call around? Do you do due diligence? If you're any NFL team, yes, but I have heard nothing of substance around Treylon Burks. Now, I think that, all right, so read me the definition of polarizer again, can you? And let's see if Will Levis fits this description on Urban Dictionary. Did you click off that page?
I sure did.
Okay. Well,
polarizer. A thing, polarizer, right? Not polarizing, but the word polarizer. A thing that is the cause of controversy on both sides, something that is either loved or hated with no in between.
Will Levis fits that description. I think Titans fans, I don't know to put a percentage on it, but I think Titans fans are largely all in, as is their organization, by the way, on Will Levis. They love Will Levis. They love his work ethic. They loved him when they tried to trade up for him in the first round. They loved him when they drafted him in the second round. They've loved the attitude, the approach. They love the talent. Plenty of people around the NFL are very skeptical of Will Levis as being that kind of figure that may not put them over the top, but almost may hurt them if you hear a handful of people or if you read a lot of the analysis out there around the Titans right now.
Well, I don't know that it was a unanimous Titans fans loved the Will Levis pick when it was made.
Oh, no, very much so. Very famously, this show had somebody on it.
Don't know who you might be referring to, but
don't I?
Even beyond the...
Well, he might not be wrong yet. We'll find out.
The ironic thing is that drop came from me talking about my draft opinion of Will Levis.
That's correct.
Besides the Tennessee fan, the Vol fan factor of it, like, Will Levis was a polarizing draft prospect as well. Like, a lot of people were wary of Will Levis coming out. The entire NFL was wary of Will Levis coming out. It's why he plummeted out of the first round. So I think Will Levis won over Titans fans without question.
Yes.
His rookie year.
So we're talking about from the moment he was drafted.
Yeah.
I'm talking about heading into this season.
Heading into this season,
Let's put aside, because there's no question he was a polarizing figure here among Tennessee fans. Famously, many of you advocating for the whole spit in their face type of argument by drafting the Kentucky quarterback to the Tennessee Titans franchise, which is, of course, the dumbest thing in the world. Now, even though the Grizzlies clearly and obviously spit in the face of Vols fans by drafting Zach Edey over Dalton Knecht, but that's a subject for another day. So, Will Levis now, though, is maybe not as polarizing as he was a draft prospect, but there's definitely a level of polarization around him. But if we're let's take it more in-house. Let's take it more to the state of Titans fans and Titans media. People that know this team, that cover this team, that talk about this team every day. If I had to rank polarizing figures on the Titans roster this year, if you asked me to do it, I would not put Will Levis number one. I would probably put Treylon Burks number one. Because he is over-discussed for a level of production that has yet to exist. He is forever and always associated with A.J. Brown, which is one of the most polarizing Tennessee Titans transactions of my lifetime, certainly. He is constantly injured and now in a situation where he's not done here. He very much has the opportunity to earn future viability with the Tennessee Titans roster because, as we've mentioned, DeAndre Hopkins on a one-year deal, or 1 year remaining on his 2-year deal, and Tyler Boyd on a 1-year deal. So they are in need of future wide receiver help that could find itself with Treylon Burks as a solution if things go to plan. But Treylon Burks, I might not even put Levis second on this list among in-house discussion, not extrapolating this out to the larger NFL. I think Treylon Burks is the most polarizing figure on the roster this year, and that's not just because I'm down on this situation.
Yeah, I don't think Levis is at the top of the list because I feel like there's still so much unknown with Levis, right? Like with Levis, it's optimism. It's hard. It's really hard to have a very strong opinion one way or another on Will Levis.
Oh, I don't think that's true.
No, it's hard. We do not have enough of a sample size to. That's literally what this entire season is about,
people
right?
People having strong opinions about Will Levis all over the place doesn't seem that hard.
Okay, people will have strong opinions about it, but to make a determination on whether or not he is the future of this franchise,
to be accurate about
it is impossible to have a meaningful opinion based on what we've seen so far. That's the whole point of this season is one way or another, if he's healthy, we anticipate knowing at the end of the year if this is somebody you can continue to build around at quarterback. So I agree with you that Levis is not at the top of the list. Burks has been talked about the most in that way, but I think I'd also put Devondre Sweat up there because that's a guy that you
I'd put him over Levis.
You definitely over Levis. You either love or hate the pick. If you hate the pick, maybe you're concerned about the off-field stuff. Maybe you're concerned that you haven't seen him out there at OTAs, at minicamp, about the weight stuff, about him being in shape come training camp, how important he's going to be to that defensive line. If you love the pick, then you're staunchly defending the pick, right? And you're staunchly defending probably everything else Ran Carthon has done throughout this process.
Now, Sweat, because he is a more recent arrival. Burks is more polarizing because it has been a span of, we are now heading into what, year 3 of Treylon Burks?
Yeah, and he was a first-round pick.
He's a first-round pick.
And the AJ stuff. Like, it's all a factor.
It's all a part of the Treylon Burks issue, we'll call it. Sweat is 2 for me on this list. So let's work our way through, because I was shocked. I put out a clip from Monday's show. I realized I hadn't posted anything from the Dane Brugler interview yesterday, so I said, okay, I'll take Dane Brugler talking about Devondre Sweat, and I'll put it on Instagram. And I'll read the exact caption that I posted on it, because very quickly, many Titans fans in my mentions, mad as hell for what I said, or what the caption said. Not even what I said in the clip, not even what Dane said in the clip, but just the caption alone. Tell me if you find this to be controversial. Devondre Sweat has all the makings of a potential Titans draft boom/bust. Do you find that to be controversial in the least? Because on the one hand, he is an incredibly talented player. He is the Outland Trophy winner. He is one of the best, if not the best, defensive lineman in the country last year. He was a part of a team that contended, did not win, but contended for a national championship in the college football playoff. He was one of the key factors to that team's success. He was excellent last year. There is no question that the player is talented, so there's the boom. But the argument for bust, or the argument for red flags that could lend itself in that direction, is louder than anything in support of the boom. Dane Brugler and Jackson, I mean, you may even feel it necessary to pull this clip if you wanted to from my Twitter timeline. But here's where it starts for me, okay? Beyond his college career, if I'm going to say, all right, let's take Tavondre Sweat, the Titans player, not the Texas defensive lineman, but the Titans player. What is it that makes him polarizing? He's a second-round pick that you passed on a pretty substantial trade offer for, multiple trade offers for, by the general manager's own admission. And I don't know what else other teams were offering, but I can read you what the Rams were offering for the Tavondre Sweat pick, because I did some reporting on this after the draft and was, surprised that they ultimately passed on this deal. So Tavondre Sweat at 38 overall, the Rams offered the deal that Carolina took at 39, which was the very next pick, 52 overall, 155 overall, and a 2025 second for them to go to 38 and take, theoretically, Braden Fisk was the player that they took at 39. So I don't know that they're making that trade for Sweat if they want Fisk to play alongside Jared Verse and reunite the two Florida State defensive linemen there. But so that was one of the deals that the Titans passed on to take Tavondre Sweat. That, to me, is a massive opportunity cost, no matter how good the player is. For a team that lacks so much across the board, that's draft capital into the future is not exactly flush. Or not, they're not Arizona, right? They're not out here wheeling and dealing to try and generate as much capital as humanly possible. So they pass on that deal among several others. Brian Callahan follows that up in the press conference after they draft Sweat and says, well, listen, just because there were offers doesn't mean that we felt the deal was good enough to pass on the player that we ultimately took. And if that is how they feel about Tavondre Sweat, which it very much is, then that's fine. They can feel justified in that and will be justified if it works out. But because of who he is, compounded with the opportunity cost of the passing on that draft or passing on that trade, plus him being almost completely unavailable the entire offseason, and the weight thing, he is as polarizing a figure as exists on this roster, not named Treylon Burks. And I'm not out here trying to drag him for his sins of his collegiate career or even the pre-draft stuff, but it has to be discussed, right? It has to be considered. But I could not, for the life of me, Lucas, understand why Titans fans, or at least the ones that were in my Instagram comments, were so mad about the idea that we were even remotely critical of the opportunity cost that passing on Tavondre Sweat in lieu of a trade option, a legitimate trade option, could potentially cause this team down the road. It hasn't happened yet, and I'm not out here bashing Tavondre Sweat, but it's a player, and you'll hear Dane Brugler articulate this now, Jackson, if we could, talking about why he was one of the biggest, I can't remember the word he exactly used, but basically one of the biggest head scratchers in the draft. Let's hear from Dane Brugler. Didn't love the opportunity cost situation that they may have had with Sweat at the pick that they took him at.
Tavondre Sweat was one of the wild cards of the draft. He really was, because everything that you just mentioned, he has, for a guy that's 360 some pounds, for him to be able to move like he can, it's just, there's only so much you can do if you're a center or a blocker trying to slow him down. But it all comes down to, can you trust him? And that's something that there's several red flags. You go back to on and off the field. He's a fifth-year senior. His first 4 years at Texas combined, he had a grand total of 9.5 tackles for loss. So single-digit tackles for loss. Why not the production until your fifth and final year? Why did it take 5 years for you to kind of get your act together. I mean, he was open with scouts that he maybe was kind of enjoying the college life a little too much as an underclassman with the Longhorns. And that was something that scouts talked about often, about how off the field, he loved the party. It was a part of what he did. And throughout the draft process, T'Vondre Sweat, when he was meeting with teams and talking with scouts, he did a lot to kind of convince teams that, hey, I'm ready to be a professional. I've turned over a new leaf and I'm kind of matured. But then 2 weeks or 3 weeks before the draft, he gets a DWI. And it's like, okay, is this guy just telling us what we want to hear, or is this just a blip on his development trajectory? I mean, there's all these red flags with a guy like this who's so talented that every team looked at him very differently. He was off a lot of boards around the league. Other teams thought, okay, if he gets to, let's say, the 4th round, we'll feel comfortable drafting him there. There's no way to be sure if the Titans don't draft him in the 2nd round. Would he even still be there in the 3rd round? Or were there other teams ready to take him in the 2nd round? We'll never know for sure how that would play out. But we do know that it is certainly a risk to take a T'Vondre Sweat where they took him.
Would you not say that is reasonable analysis from Dane Brugler?
Yes.
He presents on the front side. So let me read you some of the commentary from the people that responded to this clip. Love seeing these posts before we've even reached training camp in his rookie year. Don't like bashing our draft picks, says Nathan Kelly, before we get to see them play. Somebody says they be giving everyone microphones now, huh? Most of those questions are old news, except possibly wait. No, very much not. It's old news. He just spent a month not practicing. I have never seen a level of softness from at least the representative sample size of people commenting on that clip about a player who has plenty of questions around him. And, honestly, thank God that players are not as soft about the criticism. That's nothing but constructive criticism. It's pointing out everything that took him to this point. So I'm not saying that all fans are hyper defensive or hypersensitive about what it is, that I felt was completely reasonable and well thought out and well researched, by the way, if you're Dane Brugler analysis. But this one made me laugh. I don't think Buck Rising has ever had a good take in his life, which ignores the fact that I'm not the one speaking in that clip at all. I don't think Buck Rising has ever had a good take in his life. Dude either hypes up guys who do nothing all season or disses on guys who are good. I don't know how he has a platform. Who's the last guy I hyped up that was really, really bad? Do you remember? I can't pick one off the top of my head, but I'm assuming that one of you would remember me.
I don't know. You have all sorts of weird hills that you die on, but yeah, it's all very
weird
reasonable.
Hills that people are dying on exist in my comments on Instagram around that chat. I don't get why people are so sensitive. In ways that the players are not bothered by. But
we're talking about Instagram comments here. Yes, people are hypersensitive about it. T'Vondre Sweat is very important to their success this season.
Sure,
more so than Treylon Burks, assuming the wide receiver core remains largely intact health-wise, right? Like T'Vondre Sweat needs to play a bigger role for this defense than Treylon Burks probably does for this offense if Ridley, Boyd, and Hopkins can largely stay healthy this year. So it is a sensitive topic for Titans fans because they haven't seen him out there yet.
But sensitive to you are defending a person, or you are getting out there for a person who you have no idea how this is going to pan out. And I'm not saying that I do either. But to ignore all the things that led him to this point is one of the more stupid ways of discussing this guy that I've seen. And I was just kind of taken aback by the level of reaction that a pretty benign post drew. Anyway, last call for phone calls, 615-737-1045. If you got them, we'll wrap up the show coming up next. Welcome back to the show. We are fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. 615-737-1045 is the number if you want to jump in. So, I wanted to bring this up quickly because it made me laugh to see Rashad Weaver quote tweet something that was going on in the city over the weekend. Did you see this Nazi march down Broadway over the weekend? Patriot Front is what they're called.
I saw
Oh
of
my
it.
God, Lucas, turn on your microphone while we're doing a radio show.
I saw of it. I feel like John Gruden. What
happened there?
That is some quick work by you.
Oh, no.
I saw.
Why do you feel like John Gruden? Were you marching? What happened?
No, don't do this.
There was a white nationalist hate group marching down Lower Broadway over the weekend. And of course, nobody condones those things except for really, really stupid people. If you're advocating on behalf of the Nazis, we probably don't want you around here anyway. But it made me think of a clip from my favorite movie. My favorite movie is The Blues Brothers, where they are getting ready, where Elwood and Jake are trying to cross this bridge, but they can't get across the bridge because why, Jackson?
Illinois Nazis. I hate Illinois Nazis.
So, not Illinois Nazis, and I don't know if they're Tennessee Nazis, but we don't love the Nazis marching down. We don't love the Nazis anywhere, but we don't love the Nazis marching down Broadway. And those, the people taking up for them in the comments of Rashad Weaver's tweet made me laugh because not made me laugh, it made me scared first and foremost because, of course, nobody condones that anywhere other than the worst people among us. But I love, do you have that entire clip? Because I want the entire clip. I want the exchange with the police officer, and then I want the Illinois Nazis.
No, because it's laden with curse words.
Well, that's fine. Your task was to bleep them. I wanted the full clip.
It's too late now.
Not worth it. He's never seen the Blues Brothers.
You've never seen the Blues Brothers?
I have not seen the Blues Brothers.
Oh my God. I could watch that movie. I could watch that movie every day for the rest of my life. That's like Joe Mazzulla. He watches The Town every day of his life just to kind of get the Boston juices flowing. Yeah.
Blues Brothers, legendary movie.
They hate Illinois Nazis. We hate Tennessee Nazis.
You need to, Jackson, that should be your homework for this week is watch that movie.
Poll, please.
Hello, everyone listening to the Buck Rising Show. This is Benjamin Kenobi, better known as Obi-Wan. I have but one thing to say. Lucas, use the Force. Use the Force, Lucas, to help interpret what the hell Chewie is saying. Oh, scrap that rubbish.
Lucas, I am not your father. I repeat, I am not your father, nor am I Buck's father.
I was once a Jedi Knight, and what I'm trying to say is, Lucas, it's time to update the final poll results here on the Buck Rising Show. Do it now.
Presented by Two Rivers Ford, the South's most trusted Ford dealer. Which AFC division winner from 2023 will take the biggest step back in 2024? 65% of the audience says the Bills. 24% say the Texans.
You hate the Bills.
What?
You have been on an anti-Bills campaign all
This is the audience. I'm reading the audience voting. The large portion of the audience believes the Bills will take the biggest step back.
Sure.
They did nothing to tell you they are going to be a better football team in 2024. They are taking a step back, and that's fine. But I just don't understand having confidence in the Bills. I understand Josh Allen, but if he hasn't done it yet, why is he suddenly going to break through with the worst supporting cast he's ever had? That's what I'm confused about.
Because he's still the best quarterback in that division.
Sure. But
that's as good an argument as you need. We don't have to get bogged down in more Bills talk.
It's not good
You
enough.
hate the Bills, it's fine.
Which NFC division winner from 2023 will take the biggest step back in 2024? 46% say the Bucks, 38.6% say the Cowboys, 9.4% the Lions, 5.9% the Niners. I can see the Bucks having a coming back down to earth type of season.
Yeah, is Baker really going to be able to do that again? And all that was good. I mean, a career year was good for 9-8.
His QB coach is now the head coach of the Panthers, so who knows? But first to worst, it is might be hard to beat the Panthers in that regard. Will John Gruden ever coach again in the NFL? 89.6% of the audience say no.
Yeah, I think I'm with them. I don't know what the other percentage is doing with John Gruden, but I don't think he's coming back anytime soon.
Which college football realignment newcomer will be best equipped to compete now in their new conference? We listed Oklahoma, Texas, USC, and Oregon. 57.6% are going with Texas, 33.6% going with Oregon, 4.6% Oklahoma, and only 4.1% say USC.
Oregon is probably the best answer. The Big Ten is more for the taking, especially with Michigan. I don't know. Michigan not like susceptible, but differences with Michigan having changed over coaches, and we'll see what it does to the way that they play. Oregon just feels like they would have a higher percentage chance of succeeding in the Big Ten than, for example, Texas and the SEC.
I have no earthly idea what to expect from Michigan this year. They are an absolute mystery with Sharon Moore at the controls. Who is the most polarizing Titans player on the roster? Mike Titan on Twitter says T'Vondre Sweat. Hands down. Yosh says Will Levis. Roberts says Traylon Burks without question.
So one says hands down, one player. The other says Traylon Burks without question. Okay, very good.
Those are the polls.
All right, very good. That's the show. Had a lot of fun today. Check out the podcast. If you missed any of the 3 hours that we did, Keith Bullock and Josh Pate tomorrow. Blaine Bishop coming up next.